So the entire world has been watching in horror and utter disgust the kind of scenes that played out in Israel starting last Saturday, and subsequently the aftermath of it is still being felt, where Hamas terrorists attacked young children, women, elderly, civilians. The kind of brutality that was unleashed on them, the kind of savagery that was unleashed on these innocent civilians is not the kind that we've seen since perhaps 9/11. So, joining me now is a very, very special guest, somebody who's been in the corridors of power, who's been at the highest seat of power in Israel. Ehud Olmert is the former Prime Minister of Israel. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. First things first, our condolences, our sympathies entirely with your people, with your nation, as you go through this horrendous crisis, arguably the toughest, perhaps in the last 20 years or so, that your country's been facing. I just want to know, what is the national mood like right now? You are, of course, speaking to people in power. You're speaking to ordinary citizens as well. What is the national sentiment right now in Israel? And I'm also curious to know from you, because you've been in the highest office of the land, had you been the Prime Minister when this happened, how would you have reacted? Would you have reacted any differently?
First of all, had I been in power, most likely I would have tried to avoid it altogether. I mean, I probably would have formed an entirely different policy towards Gaza and towards the Palestinian issue. But that's something that is easy to say when you are out of office. Had I been Prime Minister when such an attack would have taken place with these terrible atrocities against so many thousands of civilians, I would have reacted against the perpetrators. What exactly needs to be done, I think, is too early to say, and we have to be very careful, of course, not to give an announcement in advance to the Hamas what exactly the Israeli military operation is. We haven't started yet. Only aerial attacks for the time being. Correct. Against headquarters of the Hamas organizations in different parts of Gaza. But ground operation didn't start yet, and I don't know if and when and how the ground operation will take place. We need, I think, a certain patience to get ready and to make sure that we do the right thing against the right targets and to avoid as much as we can collateral damage that will cause unnecessary suffering to people that are not involved. It's not easy because this is a very crowded urban center. And the Hamas organization is embedded and into the urban centers precisely in order to protect themselves or in order to force Israel to also attack innocent civilians. Mm-hmm. So we have to be careful, we have to be very meticulous, but nothing will prevent us from reaching out for the leaders of the Palestinian terrorist organizations in order to do justice.
You know, even when you were in power, there have been attacks by Hamas on Israeli citizens in the past. Since it came to power in 2005-06, there have been multiple crises between Israel and Gaza. You know, 2008 was a very infamous one. There was again skirmishes into 2012, 2016-17. But what we saw last week was qualitatively different, because I can't remember the last time, you know, such a large number of civilians were attacked and in such wide areas, more than 20 locations being targeted, and the sheer depravity of those crimes. You know, pregnant women and their stomachs being cut open, babies being beheaded. I'm just trying to understand from you, who has seen, you know, Israeli politics as an insider and who has worked with Hamas, who has you know, has had interactions with Hamas. What were they trying to achieve? What was the objective? Because I can't see any good coming out of this other than the total and complete annihilation of Hamas. So why would they do such a thing? What's the most plausible explanation for it?
First of all, you have to understand this is the DNA of Hamas. Hamas is ISIS. Hamas is Taliban. Hamas is Al Qaeda. They are killers, they are murderers, they are radicals, they are fundamentalists, they are extreme of the extreme of the extreme. And killing innocent people and torturing them in the outrageous manner in which they did it is the nature of this organization. 16 years ago, perhaps more, they were attacking the PLO Palestinians in Gaza, and they threw their own brothers and sisters, but that belong to a different organization.
Correct.
From the 14th floor of the building, the hospital building in Gaza, to the ground. They were shooting them on their knees to make them disabled for the rest of their lives. And they are Palestinians against Palestinians. So for them to rape, to behead children, and to rape the mothers in front of them and then kill the mothers and the children, to kill elderly people as they did, is the essential, the core of what this organization is all about.
Let's talk about Israel's counteroffensive. And I think it's very clear. You said this. Right now, it's airstrikes, but a massive ground operation is being prepared for. And the military objective is very clear. Go into Gaza, ensure the complete obliteration of Hamas, make sure that Hamas does not even dare to think of carrying out an attack the kind of which we saw last Saturday. So that part is very, very clear. And Israel will be successful in that objective, no doubt. But what is unclear is what happens after that? What happens after the next 6 months? What replaces Hamas? Because Hamas came into existence, came into prominence really, because of the political vacuum after Israel left in the 2005-6 crisis. Hamas thrived on that vacuum. What replaces Hamas, or what comes after Hamas? Is that even a question that's being asked in Israel right now? Is that even a discussion that's going on, whether in the corridors of power or amongst common people?
There are those who don't, and there are many who do. I personally, as you know, when I was prime minister, I was trying to reach out. I was fighting the Hamas organization in a very aggressive manner when they were shooting rockets on Israeli townships across the border. But at the same time, I negotiated with the Palestinian Authority, with the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, in an attempt to reach an agreement that will make peace between us and the Palestinians. So, unfortunately, the Palestinians are divided between a certain amount. I don't know how many of them, I don't know what part of the population they are, whether they are half of the population, mostly they are in Gaza.
Yeah.
They are very extreme, fundamentalist, Islamic, dominated by Iran, the Shiites extremists from the Ayatollahs of Iran. And there are many that live in the West Bank. Most of them are anxious, I believe, to establish a different format of relations, a different pattern of relations with the state of Israel. I think that it's incumbent upon us just as much as it is on them to try and reach out in order to establish a different framework of relations that will lead towards peace. In Gaza, the chances of doing peace are different. We have to fight with Hamas because this is a terrorist organization. They don't want to make peace. They don't want to compromise with Israel. They don't have any specific legitimate demand that can be responded in a manner that can lead into any kind of negotiations. We are pulled out in 2005 from Gaza.
Correct.
According to the United Nations and the international community, we don't occupy 1 meter of territory from Gaza. And still they are fighting and they are trying to destroy us and they are trying to kill us and they are attacking Israeli settlements across the border on a continuous basis since we pulled out from the Gaza district. So the chance of making peace with, is it possible to make peace with Taliban? Is it possible to make peace with Al-Qaeda? Is it possible to make peace with ISIS? It's not, and it's not possible to make peace with Hamas. So
Okay.
when you can't make peace, and they don't want to stop fighting, and they are perpetrating these atrocities, there is only one way to deal with it, and this is to fight back and to be stronger and more powerful and more aggressive in order to stop it, and that's what we will do.
So I do want to know from you, because a lot of the Israeli success in this current operation, Operation Iron Swords, as it's called, depends on how contained, geographically speaking, this operation is going to be. If it is between Israel and Hamas, this could possibly get over in a few months. But if it spills over into a wider regional conflict involving Iran and Hezbollah and attackers from Syria, and who knows, what Egypt's position might be. If this becomes a wider regional conflict, what would that mean? Is that something that Israel is contemplating? Is Israel is factoring in its operational plans?
Yeah, it's a very good question. The purpose of the Islamist organizations, the Hezbollah and the Hamas, and the strategy of Iran is not completely clear. Definitely, Iran is trying to upset the balance in the Middle East, and they are trying to penetrate and spread their different terrorist groups in different parts of the Middle East. And the question is correct. What happens if, as a result of the Israeli counteroffensive, they will try to, at least the Hezbollah in the north, will try to somehow upset the balance by starting their hostilities in the north.
Yeah.
If that will happen, we'll have to deal with it. And, I dealt with it when I was Prime Minister in 2006. And we had a very serious confrontation with Hezbollah. I think that to this day, they still suffer the pains of what happened to them then. And their leader, Sheikh Nasrallah, then said at the end of this confrontation that had he known what my reaction, 1% of my reaction will be, he wouldn't have started it. So I hope that they will understand that if they will try to get into this conflict now, it will end up in a very painful and bloody way to Hezbollah. So what we try to do is we try to limit it to the context of Gaza and the Hamas. And we'll do every possible effort to make sure that the collateral damage will be the minimal possible under these circumstances. When they live in a city, when they hide in the center of the urban center where thousands of people live, it's not simple, it's difficult, it's complex, it's sensitive. We'll try to minimize the number of the collateral damage, but there will be some, no doubt about it.
I do want to know from you, Prime Minister, this is my final question. In the weeks and months leading up to this attack, there was a perception that Israel is normalizing its ties with its Arab neighbors. There was a lot of buzz about a Saudi-Israel deal. We had the Abraham Accords between the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Israel. Morocco and Sudan got added to it. So it seemed like, historic normalization of ties was happening. But after this attack and after Israel's counteroffensive, what happens to that normalization process?
Well, I think that, the reactions that I get from different parts of the Middle East, from some of those countries that you mentioned, which have established peace relations with the State of Israel, I get the messages from many people that I've met over the last few years, and I have established some good relations with them. I tell them, kill them, destroy them, stop them, fight against them, and so on and so forth. So I think that the popular response in many of these countries, they are moderates. They never had any direct confrontation with the State of Israel. The blood was never spilled between us and the Emirates, between us and Bahrain. And I don't think that they want this. In fact, I believe, I don't know, but I believe that one of the reasons why Hamas was doing what they did now is because they were afraid of this new alliance between America, Saudi Arabia, and the normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel. They interpreted it as, I think they should have, that this is made in order to stop the Iranian penetration into this part of the Middle East and the sabotage of the Iranians against some of those countries, particularly the Saudis.
All right.
So that was something that the Iranians wanted to stop. That's probably one of the reasons why they activated the long arm of Hamas to try and upset this new alliance.
All right. Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, former Prime Minister of Israel, many thanks for speaking with us here on CNN News 18.